22 yards. Should be just a nice, comfortable 9-iron for him. They're going to go nuts when he hits this thing.
Yo, yo, yo. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of the internet, welcome into Preferred Lines for a grand finale of a long, strenuous, exciting, exhilarating, tasking 2022-2023 PGA Tour season. My name is Joe Idoni. At Tour Picks on Twitter is the number one spot to find me and all of my content. You have stumbled yourself upon a golf gambling podcast. We are going to touch base and talk about the odds this week for Eastlake. It is one of the stranger betting weeks of the year, but we're still going to talk about it. We're going to recap what was an extremely exciting finish to the BMW Championship that I can't wait to talk to our guest about. Talk a little bit of Ryder Cup. We're going to do all that, brought to you by our friends at Fantasy Golf Pod. Make sure to give them a follow. Make sure to check out all their great content and support people in the space doing good things, consistently good things. People that you like to follow. This is a big week for anyone who creates golf content. It's sort of the last hurrah of the season. And then, a lot of us will continue to grind this stuff out through the fall where the numbers will drop off precipitously and NFL starts to take steam as it should. But it's an exciting time to sort of wrap up the year in like one of our bigger weeks. So if you could support, share with a friend, retweet something that you see on Twitter, any of that helps to bring ourselves to a greater and grander audience. Speaking of audience, what's up, Brent? I am happy that you are here with us tonight. He loves the intro, so I'm going to tweak it a little bit this off season. I've got some changes in the works, but I'm happy that you like it. William is here for Killer Keith. Let's bring him right on. Welcoming back to Preferred Lines for his third or fourth time, a recurring guest, a great human, a great friend, a champion of the Run Good Fantasy League. Welcome back to the show, Keith Stewart. What's up, dude?
Joe, I wore this shirt just for you, my friend. The Four Horsemen.
I see it. Dominant performance by the Four Horsemen. We were talking about it before we went hot. I would still say probably one of the highlights of my year and anything that I've ever done sort of golf content related wise was when we all went out to Las Vegas. We drafted teams season long. It was intense. The group thread was heating up throughout. You were victorious this weekend over Jason Sobel in the championship. Matthew Fitzpatrick shouldered some load that you probably didn't see him coming into this week. You were fortunately helped by the one player in the field that decided to withdraw on your opponent's team. But all in all, a great win, a great season, and congrats to you, my friend.
Hey, I'm with you. That trip out to Vegas back in January was a highlight of my year. There's no doubt about it. Sitting with Rick and everyone and drafting the teams. I'm sure everyone that watched that was like, man, I want to do that, and I got to do it. So for sure, it's the highlight of my year, no doubt.
Yeah, it was so much fun, man. The highlight of the BMW Championship was obviously Sunday, right? It came absolutely down to the wire. The back nine was epic from Victor Hovland. I think Rick himself had the tweet where he gained more strokes on approach on his back nine than he had in all but except for like 5 complete rounds of his career. So it was the best singular performance over 9 holes that we've seen from Victor Hovland. Is maybe the best 9-hole performance that we potentially saw all season long. That is a golf course that played significantly easier this time around, but it's not a golf course that you just run through the back nine and shoot like a 29 like Victor Hovland did. What were your takeaways from that? How impressed did you leave Chicago this weekend with Victor Hovland?
Well, I tell you, when I left Muirfield Village, I was super impressed with Victor Hovland. I mean, he took that next step in his career, and I don't mean to bring that up. I just thought about it in my head, who he beat in the playoff. But, Man, he blew me away on Sunday at the BMW, Joey. He blew me away. And he blew everybody away, including Scotty Scheffler. I mean, even Scheffler was feeling the heat. You could tell. When he comes up 17T, and, we always think back to that Rahm putt. There was a triple-decker condominium building back there that BMW built, right? And the 18th green is right to your left when you tee off there. So Victor's up there, and he's He's on the green, and Scotty knows what's happening, right? And he's right next to him teeing off, and the place is going nuts. I mean, it was just so impressive to see Victor do his thing. And man, oh man. I mean, like I said, I thought he was impressive at the Memorial, and Victor just blew us all away because the easy nine was the front nine by far.
Yeah.
All week. It was gettable those first 4 or 5 holes. You could get after and make some birdies. And what he did to that back nine, 1-4 on the scorecard, 11 threes overall, no fives on your scorecard. I mean, when you play professional golf, your coach would always say, just put as many threes on the card as you can, and you'll be happy, right? Guy did it. Unbelievable.
Yeah, speaking of tweets from Rick, I wanted to bring this up and talk about the next player that I wanted to ask you about, and it's Scotty Scheffler. So he put this out there today in terms of players who have gained 50 strokes tee to green in a single season. There's 31 players who have done it ever. Only 3 have gained 100 plus, and Scotty Scheffler is the only one at plus 125, and he's 214 strokes gained tee to green this season. But you see the putting numbers. You saw it let him down on Sunday. You saw him not be able to make a short one on 16. You can see it really eating at a player. And have you ever been around or sort of as someone who is close to the course, an athlete that is this dominant in almost every aspect of the game, but just continuing to play at such a baseline below the rest of the field in putting specifically, and it being yielding these terrible results for him, which ultimately are ending up second places. But in his mind, he should be cleaning up these tournaments, right?
Oh, he should be totally cleaning them up. There's no way. When he went on that 7 tournament run and he had all top 5s, I went and I did some digging with Tiger Woods because I was like, well, I remember a bunch of long Tiger runs. Tiger did 7 straight top 5s 3 times in his career. And during those streaks, he won twice, he won 3 times, and he won 6 times. Of course, he also did 8 in a row, of which he won 6 times. And then he did 11 in a row, of which he won 8 times. You got to close the deal. Rahm's up player of the year. He's got 4 wins in a major, unless, like, let's say, I don't know who could get him. Maybe if Wyndham Clark wins this week or something like that, couple wins in a major. How does Scotty's not player of the year just blows my mind.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. We'll see if he's able to do it this week. We'll get into that in a moment. He obviously has the huge advantage with the starting strokes coming into the Tour Championship, but broader picture stuff, right? It was a wild season, Keith. We had the news of sort of the merger, and I wonder, like, as someone, and I often talk about this, and I've told you this as well, that I think you were one of, if not the hardest working person doing golf content right now. You're basically living out of that backpack that I see behind you there, and you're at each tournament every week on the grounds, early in the week, throughout the weekend. You cover this as extensively as I think anybody in the industry. And just being on site, like, what have you heard? What is the general consensus from players, from other people in the media on where things currently stand with this merger? Are we likely, and my real question is, what's the likelihood we see players from LIV compete in PGA Tour tournaments next season, or potentially compete in like a Tour Championship type format?
Oh, wow. I mean, the best I can tell you is that they just really don't know, because the merger's not there yet. The merger, crossing the T's, dotting the I's, is definitely not there yet. The one thing that gives me pause that there will be there'll be some sort of a mixture next year is that LIV doesn't have a schedule yet, hasn't even talked about a schedule yet. So that gives me a little bit of hope that we're going to have more crossover than just the 4 majors. But LIV's not very prepared to begin with. I mean, the fact that they don't have another tournament before the Ryder Cup where they could have put Bryson and Brooks up there and put them on display before Zach had to make his picks, or the fact that they scheduled one in Chicago the week before those guys need to be in Rome. So I can tell you this much: they really don't know out there. When it comes across like no one knows what's going on, they really don't know what's going on. The one thing I can tell you is, come early January, I'll be down there with you, and we will be watching Tiger Arena Golf, which I think will be awesome. But as far as the 2 tours coming together, there being an elite tour, from Jay on down, I mean, I see the same people every week out here from PGA Tour comms, and it's just business as usual. You saw the 24 schedule, and that's what we're going to do. And who plays in it is slightly up in the air, but I don't think it's as up in the air as you and I would want it to be.
Yeah, to be honest with you, what it kind of feels like to me, and I sense this on a very minor, microscopic level, right? And it's just, you have to feel it in a sense every week. It's like, okay, a tournament wraps up on Sunday. Where's my next plane ticket? Where's my next tournament? Where's my next course preview coming from? Let me start to pull together data. And everything is so jammed together, you really have no time to just sit and like assess and think about things like, how am I going to make this show better? How am I going to make this show appear visually better to some people in my audience next season? How am I going to reach more people? How am I going to try to attract a sponsor for the show? Like, you almost have no time to think about this because it's just bang, 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 one week after another. And it feels like the tour is kind of in that position, but with a little bit of time here and a little bit of a sense of some breathing room in the fall, I'd be hopeful that we are able to get some information. I would ultimately like to see, if they're going to make the merger happen, I think that there should be an avenue for the players to come back and compete in certain events. And you and I talked about LIV. I think the very first LIV event, you had me on your show, and we talked about it, and we were both like, I don't really like it. I'm interested to see kind of where it goes on. I'm not a fan of fracturing the professional game of golf, but we'll see what happens. You know, here we are almost 2 years later, and I think things have gone from their perspective fairly successfully. They haven't reached an audience that I think they would, but they've had players win major championships. They've been able to create this merger. They've been able to create the disruption that they were always sort of seeking to get, in a sense. And I just wonder how many of those guys it would be appealing to come back to the PGA Tour, and how many of them would really, if that door was sort of cracked open, how many of them would be open to walking through it?
Well, I tell you what, probably very few. But the
so
challenge may, I mean, I think you're spot on there. But the challenge may become if their tour goes away, and ultimately, when this first on June 6th, when it was all announced, just being around, it seemed to me that like, okay, what are they going to do? They're going to, the PGA Tour is going to remain the same. The DP World Tour is going to remain the same. And maybe we'll ultimately get this super elite world tour, right? That'll have maybe like 4 or 5 events. There'll be 4 majors. And then, you know, they'll play like maybe like a Bay Hill and a Genesis and something like that. And that'll be like the 15 to 18 tournament season for the bigwigs, right? And I still ultimately think it's going that way. You know, one of the things that made me really happy was that when they appointed Jason Gore. So when Gore stopped playing full time, he went to the USGA and he helped that transition of the US Open to make it more of a players tournament, right? Yes. And that trickled down to the USAM. We saw that this weekend. I mean, we've seen it more and more. You know, back in March, maybe it was February or March, Jason transitioned to the tour. And now he sat next to Jay, and Jay has fallen under a ton of criticism, and the majority of that is warranted because of lack of communication and, you know, a little bit of, you know, well, we're the best tour in the world, so, you know, I don't really have to pay attention to you, Joe, or I don't have to pay attention to you, Keith, right? Like, we're great. And I think in all of this, as the evolution takes place, I love seeing that Gore has now, like, he's got a super important job as basically the go-between between the PAC and the commissioner's office and what will be this new super board, right? With Jimmy Dunn and everybody else and Hurley, you know, like, so I think that we're going to get what the fans want and what the players want ultimately as we transition. I mean, there's a lot of things like all year where they'll say things in the media center where they're like, well, we tried it this way this year, and in 24, we're going to try it another way, and then by 25, we'll know. Well, I know that's not going to make you happy, and it's probably going to fill up the comments or the Twitter feed, but I mean, that's the way they think. This is a cruise ship, and it takes 4 miles to turn. And yes, LIV happens quickly, but LIV really doesn't know what they're doing, right? Ultimately, I mean, we just outlined it with something simple like, if you want to position your players for the Ryder Cup, give them a chance, right? Give them a tournament right now, right? And, you know, ultimately, they didn't really think of that in a macro sense. So man, I wish I had better answers for you. I could just tell you that the players are way more engaged. They were super engaged with the 70, 50, 30, Joe. I mean, that was like, I know everybody was making fun of Tom Alter, who's the guy that was going to Terrell Hatton there. So Tom, he's the FedEx points guy, right? So he's that guy, right? He's the FedEx points guru. And he's going to all those guys, and they're creating that social media, which is great. But, like, that's a tough job. Hey, Joe, you're probably not going to make it. I know it's been like a year, but you're probably not going to, so it's one of those things where I think that they got a sense of urgency out of the players, and now they're stepping up. And I think over the course of the next 12 months, if you and I sat here and we did an anniversary of this pod, we're going to see a much more clearer light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, that's well said. I wanted to ask you, let's sort of transition into what you just mentioned, because the clips have come out. I've seen them kind of go both ways. The one with Terrell was kind of awkward, right? It almost felt like he didn't care, and it sort of opened them up to sort of those criticisms because they were already hearing it from a number of fans. I do not like this format, Keith. Do the players, you're as close to the players, you're with them, you're in the ropes every single week. Is there a frustration level for them, or do they feel like this is a fair way to culminate an entire season's worth of play?
No. But that being said, the guys at the top realized giving Scotty or Rory 2 extra shots was a big deal. So they were fighting more so than they ever would have fought before 2019. And it took a year or two for them to figure that out. But, those middle tier guys that had to fight for the top 50 to get to the $20 million purses, that was a huge cutoff, right? Yeah. But the top 30, that was a huge cutoff for the 4 majors and also, the 2-year exemption. The guys that were in that top 10 really want those strokes because ultimately, over the last decade at Eastlake, the average winning score is like 12 under par. So if you're more than 5 back of the best in the world, you have no shot. And you're just playing for the gross championship, at the club. So, it's like they created a sense of urgency and everything, but they're just accommodating what the rules are and figuring out the best way to win. They're not saying that they like it.
Yeah. Is there a solution? Like, have you heard a player give you like a good solution where you're like, yeah, you know what? That sounds like a fair way to solve it. Because what gets me the most is I don't know any other golf tournaments like it. I think what they're concerned about, and they don't want to end up with Emiliano, if a match play situation and Corey Connors versus Emiliano Grillo. But that's the reality of playoffs in every other sport, right? You can have an undefeated season. You can be perfect. You can beat everyone by 21 points on Sundays, but you got to go to the playoffs and you got to, win a game in the snow. You've got to prove it. And if you lose to Taylor Moore in the snow, you lose to Taylor Moore. Like that's what irks me about it is Scotty Scheffler, we just showed it, obviously has a built-in advantage based on his talent and his skill level. Does he need to be 10 strokes ahead of Tyrrell Hatton and Jordan Spieth? I don't like that.
No. I mean, Tyrrell Hatton would give you some choice words on that to begin with. But so I mean, I'll play the game with you for a minute, right? Okay. So everyone talks about match play. Mm-hmm. I think what they fail to understand, and I'll go back to like all my years of running tournaments as a PGA professional, is that you can't run the whole season one way and then just go to match play to decide the winner, right? Okay. When you play football, even though it's single elimination in the NFL, they still play the same game.
Fair.
So my idea would be bring the top 30 guys or whatever number you want it to be. Let them play 36 holes on Thursday and Friday. Give me the top 16 guys, all right? They can play 4 matches, so that's 36 over the weekend. Great. We get to see tons of golf, and then that's it. Then they're done, right? They can have the whole fall off as far as I'm concerned. Yep. But instead of match play, let them do 18-hole stroke play matches, like the old Shell's Wonderful World of Golf, right? Yeah. So you're still playing the same format, and if you make a triple like Max did on Saturday and you're playing Rory, well, you're done. But you're not done for one hole. Those guys hate match play. It's way too fickle, right? And there's way too much money. I mean, there's $75 million on the line this week. Last place gets $500,000, And that's not even close to like Steph Curry makes like $100 million every 3-pointer. So like the point is that like if we keep the format the same, the cream's always going to rise to the top. If you did that format I just mentioned or some iteration of that, I guarantee you on Sunday, Scotty and Rory would probably still be there.
Yeah.
Right? Now, will they both make it to the finals? Probably not. But like, at the end of the day, it's good theater. But the staggered scoring thing, just to make it easier for the fans to understand, in my mind, is just making it worse.
Yeah, it's like, to what fans, right? It's like, to who are you appealing to? What fans exactly? And you know what? I wanted to ask you about this in speaking with how players, like your access to them and how they feel about certain things. You're in a interesting spot, right? Where I think that you're very highly respected by people in media because they know your background as a PGA professional. They know what you do with Read the Line. They know your commitment to going to every tournament. But they also know that you cover betting. This is a betting show. Max Homa made some comments about a fan and basically who had talked in his backstroke over like a $3 bet with his buddy. But he did say something along the lines of, this is the concern of myself and some of the players as we continue to integrate gambling into the sport, is the effect and the flowing downstream that could have on the actual play and idiots being idiots. And I tended to disagree with him in this. This was just a one-off scenario, and the amount of eyeballs that they're attracting because they offer gambling is so much more. But there are different levels of fan bases. There are, the older generation who want to flip on CBS on Sunday and just watch, and they won't even know when they flip it on Sunday. They won't even know Scotty started 10 under, right? They're not even going to understand it. Then you have the gamblers who are going out there and watching it. Then you have just sort of the diehard fans of the game of professional golf. Do you think it's a legitimate concern from the players in integrating this, or was that just a sort of a unique situation that Max dealt with? Have you heard anything like that from anybody else?
No, in fact, if anything, most of the guys and the women, even the women will comment on it when I go out to the LPGA tour, that they love the idea that people are more engaged. There's always going to be jokers, right? Bingo. And I'll keep it brand safe, without swearing or anything. But like, at the end of the day, what Max is referring to is more of an outlier type of mentality, as far as like the fans are going to yell and try to, those guys, when they talk about they were making a $3 bet, in my mind, they were making it like you and I sitting in the stands head to head for like closest to the pin, rather than they went on DraftKings or FanDuel and then they made the bet. Exactly. They were just, jokers being jokers. And at the end of the day, I said this like a year ago. I was getting grilled on SiriusXM by some of the hosts there that were very traditional, and they said, "Well, Keith, with betting and everything, people are going to start yelling." And I said, "People yell already, but like the fact of the matter is, you remember last year in the President's Cup, it was the match with Hideki. It hit the Marshall and it kicked back into the woods. I mean, stuff happens in golf, but at least we all feel like that's rub of the green." Okay? I don't know a person that walked away from the Super Bowl thinking that thing was on the level. Now, I'm sure it was, but at least in golf, we don't have referees. We don't have a third party like judging what's going to happen, right? So at least from a betting sense, okay, somebody would say, well, this guy could throw his round. Yeah, he could do that, but with the digital coverage we have on what you and I do, right, there would be red flags all over that in a heartbeat. All right. So at the end of the day, golf is still the best sport to bet because I'm not worried about the Foot Locker guy. Right. I'm worried about two guys going head to head. And then when people bring up stupid shit, like when they say like, oh, like that guy's not going to try because he's only getting a certain amount of strokes or this, what I'm telling you, you want a sentiment coming from the tour. Those guys want to win. Yeah. Okay. Tommy Fleetwood wants to win. Tommy Fleetwood knows what we all are saying. Okay. Terrell Hatton wants to win. Is he a jerk about it? Yeah, but that's just his way of getting himself amped up. Those guys, Denny McCarthy wants to win, Joe. Okay. When I left Olympia Fields on Wednesday night, you're talking about the number one putter on the PGA Tour. Okay. He was there grinding, last guy on the putting green, and it was dark. Mm-hmm. Right. And that guy, he didn't have to be there. He was top 50. He gets every designated event. Right. Those guys, if you want a true sentiment coming from those guys, they want to be known as winners. They've been winners their whole life. They've gotten to the cream of the crop and they still want to win. And at the end of the day, I think that's what makes what we do so engaging, because those guys are killing themselves to get across the finish line. So when we do have a Victor 61, like Read the Line did yesterday, I'm like, and everyone starts texting me and DMing me and everything. They're like, this was so much fun. I'm like, well, imagine what Victor feels like.
Yeah.
I mean, we just get like 1% of his joy. And, you can see it on his face when Scotty missed that, that second shot on 18 and he knew he won, that big grin, that's infectious. And to me, that's just a different level of connection to the game that you bring every Monday, and something that I love. And it gets me excited.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think for most, of course, there are people that take it very seriously. I gamble as a hobby, right? It's not so much about the money, it's about the victory. And the same rings true with the players. It's not about the money for Viktor Hovland. It's not about $20 million at store this week. It's about the thrill of competition. It's about victory. And it's about that within a historical context, because you want to look at the money made per round this year. Taylor Gooch has made over $500,000 per 18 holes of golf he's played this year. Unbelievable. He is making more than twice as much as Scotty Scheffler per round of golf this year. And it doesn't really matter. There's no historical context. There's no real there is competition, but it's not the same, right? It's not apples to apples. It's absolutely not. So that's where the difference is. That's where the difference lies. Let's kind of go and talk about this week. I want to bring this up, Keith, and these are where players are starting strokes-wise. Hopefully it comes up here in a second. Let me see. There we go. Okay. So Scotty's 10 under. Victor actually was able to move into that second place starting at 8 under. Then you have Rory at 7, Rahm at 6, Glover at 5. You have a group there basically in groups of 5s. Starting after that, a group of 6 there at 4 under, however. This is where players start. Now, when assessing this from sort of trying to pick a winner perspective, how deep can you go? Because last year I went at 4 under and it was Rory McIlroy, and he triple bogeyed the first hole, Keith, and he went to 1 under. So he was 9 back of Scotty and was able to climb all the way back. So it gave me some hope. That was an informed Rory. That was a little bit of a different situation. How far back do you feel good about going on a board like this?
I honestly, I can't go much further back than that 4 under group.
Same. Even really, Xander at 3, no thought of it.
Just because it would be Xander, I'd have to look at the names.
Yeah.
It's just it's a tough golf course, Joe. This, right? Like last year, like what Rory did last year was amazing, because as much as I'm out there, I see a guy reload like less than I can count on one hand, right? Mm-hmm. Guys never hit the ball out of play. And what Rory did, whatever, he did what he did. But for him, he shot 17 under. The average is 12 over, since God knows they played there 22 times, and they've done it every year since 2004, right? So there's a couple before that, but it's basically 11 or 10 to 12 under wins the thing. And it's going to be 1,000 degrees. It's going to be super humid. It's going to wear these guys out. For TV, they're going to make them play in the heat of the day every day. There's no wind this week. It's like today it was like literally walking into an oven, like a pizza oven. I mean, it was, when I got off the plane, I was like, we're going to get a week of this. I was like, you got to be kidding me. It's going to make Lucas Glover's pants, look like they're from Viore or something. I mean, they're going to make them look good. It's going to be so hot this week, and there's no rain in sight. There's no break in the afternoon from storms or anything. I think it's tough, man. It's not just the guys 4, 6 back. You got to assume that the guys at 8 and 7 and 10 don't shoot. I mean, if Scotty just shoots 5 under, no matter how bad he putts, if he shoots 5 under, you're 11 back at 4 under.
Yeah,
that's the historical average for winning.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that if you're going to play the strokes, the staggered start side, I think that we would get more into strategy here, but for me, I would wait. At Read the Line, yeah. I would just be like, we're playing gross. I would wait. I would look for the weekend, and then I would look for an opportunity to jump on it, because the idea that I'm going to play Scotty at plus 160 now, and I'm sure I could get him something near that on Saturday, like I'll take it with 36 holes to go rather than with 72 for sure, you know?
Yeah. It'll be interesting because like one thing on the course that I noticed is historically it has been in like the top 10 in terms of most difficult courses on tour, but last year it was not. Last year it played easy because last year it was wet and it was soft. It's interesting how much the environmental and weather conditions can affect scoring and can affect the golf course. And last week was a perfect example. All the weather in the forecast, how wet it played. I think the scoring over under on DraftKings for the week was 7 under par was where they set the line. And I was a big proponent of going like they're going to be playing way better than that. I don't care how difficult the course is. If it's wet, if it's soft, if there's a brand new course superintendent, he's less likely to sort of push the lines on sort of flirting with extremely difficult conditions. And that all kind of played true. What have you gotten from a sense of Eastlake? How do you feel like the weather is going to impact things this week in terms of how difficult the course is going to play?
Well, the folks I've talked to down here in Atlanta, they've gotten about a little under 2 inches of rain in the month of August, and we're about three and a half weeks in. So it's not going to play like last year, and it's not going to continue to get wet like it got last year. Like it poured 2 of the days I was here last year. It's not supposed to rain at all this week. Maybe traces on like Friday night into Saturday morning, but I think the golf course is going to be in very nice condition. A lot of things get lost in TV. There's a lot of elevation changes here. Everything kind of, and the golf course is very unique. It almost runs entirely. 14 of the 18 holes run east-west, which is very interesting for a golf course. Almost always they're running in different. The holes are always running in different directions. It's like, and we're looking at a northwest wind, so we're not going to get much of a crosswind. You know, they're going to play into the wind for some, and then downwind for the others. The golf course is going to be relatively dry and in great condition. I think we're going to see it. We're going to see that 10 to 12 number on the gross side for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what? Let's pull up the odds. Give me just a second here. I'm going to pull up the odds, and we're going to go through. We'll make some. Let's do this. At the top of the odds board this week, you've got Scotty Scheffler, who starts at 10 under. Now, this is factoring in the starting strokes, of course. He is plus 150 is the best number available over at Bet365. Rory McIlroy, I mentioned, is starting 7 under, is plus 350. Victor Hovland starting in that number 2 spot is 5-1. John Rahm, 8.5-1. Patrick Cantlay, 18. Then you start to get to Xander, who I mentioned starts at -3, which was kind of interesting to me that they're hanging a 30-1 number on him. Homa's there at 35. You've got Glover at 45. Matthew Fitzpatrick at 55. Anyone in here, Keith, that is worth a play for you earlier in the week, or just someone that you have some strong thoughts on?
Oh boy, as a play, well, I feel very strongly that Victor Hovland's on a heater. I mean, I'm not trying to be Captain Obvious from the Old Spice commercials or whatever, but I'm just telling you, like, what I saw this week. I did a couple things that like really, really bug me when I push out content and I make predictions. And one of the things is that when I grabbed Wyndham earlier in the year at Quail, I had him in Mexico the week before, and he didn't show up. And I kept him the next week, and I do that a lot. I keep people for 2 weeks, 3 weeks in a row if I feel like it's warranted. And I had Lucas at 3M, and I didn't have him the next week at Wyndham. And I was like, ready to lose my mind. And then it got worse because I had Lilia Vu in Scotland for the LPGA. And then the next week she won the AIG Women's Open by 6. And I was like, I'm not doing that again. I was like, I'm going to be stubborn. And I looked at my card from Memphis, and I was like, the one guy after his opening round, he met with Joe Mayo. He got things straightened out. This guy wants to go. This guy felt he felt next level at Memorial. And I think you see a lot of this in the playoffs. Guys get on these runs and they win multiple times in the playoffs, or they contend multiple times because of the sense of urgency that's created in order to win that 18 million or whatever it was in those other years, 5 million, 10 million, whatever. So of all the guys at the top, Victor to me gives me the most pause if I was going to play on that side.
Yeah, I agree with you there in a sense on Hovland. The one guy for me, and actually the only wager that I made, and apparently Brent here is in agreement with me in the chat, is actually Lucas Glover. He's 45-1. He starts in that number 5 spot. All the players above him are much better players than Lucas Glover. That's the issue. The problem is not in the last 24 rounds. He has absolutely turned it around. He's gaining over 2.5 strokes per round over his last 24. It's been fantastic. I thought that he was relatively solid last week with a 22nd place finish.
Yeah.
He has not been to the Tour Championship since 2019 and played here, albeit I think that Georgia Golf back on Bermuda kind of suits him, right? He won in Memphis on Bermuda. He won at the Wyndham, at Sedgefield, and sort of a Donald Ross course. The par 70, a lot of things can sort of transfer over there as well. We're looking at around 7,300 yards once again. The approach play is just really what does it for me. That's what I'm leaning on mostly this week. I think almost 40% of the strokes gained last year came via approach, which is well higher than the Tour average. He's the best player in the field over the last 24 rounds. He's almost 1.5 strokes per round. That's better than Rory. That's better than Scotty. That's better than Victor. I'm okay at 45-1, knowing that he has 4 guys to chase down and really a guy that is absolutely freewheeling with nothing to lose. It's a big price. It's a high ask for him. But I think that if you're dealing with a tournament where I would say you've got about a pool of maybe nine max guys who I think can actually come through and win this, I think that he's one of them, and a 45-1 I think is a pretty fair price.
I mean, 9's a lot. It's probably more like 6 or 5 or 6 or 7. So
I've got those top 5. I think that I would put Cantlay in there.
Sure.
I would give Xander a little bit of a chance. I'm not going to completely rule out Brian Harman either. And then Max Homa has been playing a little bit better. So those were the sort of 9 that I had that I would say if I'm going to break a pie up and they play this thing 100 times, they maybe be able to find a win in there 1 or 2 times.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, Max looked good last week.
Yeah.
A bunch of people ask me when they see me show up at the media center, Keith, who you got? And they don't want to hear like our usual kind of process and everything. They're always like, it's basically like a single bullet conversation.
Yeah.
Who you got? I kept telling everybody last week, Max Homa. I just loved Max Homa last week. And then, he was in a good spot. He got derailed on Saturday. That seemed to do something to his confidence. He wasn't like his kind of mannerisms changed and everything on Saturday. You could just see it being there. You could just see it. Like what you see on TV is, if you know what you're looking for, is the same. Like I just kind of sense it a little bit more because I'm standing next to the guy. But like you can see like the expression in their face. But it would not surprise. I mean, this is a ball striker's golf course, flat out. Right. Eastlake it's a par 70. You don't get a bunch of holes off. It's just brutal par 4s, elevation changes, excellent bunkering. Just tons of Bermuda rough, which is the worst, the absolute worst. It's the worst grass to putt on. It's all grainy. I mean, you're in Florida. It's the worst.
Yeah, I know about it.
It's a weed. It grows sideways. Yeah. It's awful. And they're coming from like a velvet carpet. So Max is dangerous for sure.
It's really hard, and what I think frustrates players with Bermuda rough, just from my personal experience, is there's such an uncertainty about it. Like I played this weekend, and you don't even have to have a lot of rough. My course, 2 inches of rough maybe, and it's like a lot of Bermuda. You have no idea whether it's just going to completely jump and fly or it's going to come out dead. And it's very hard to make that decision on a shot when you know that there's like a 40-yard range of where you think this pitching wedge can go. So I can imagine that it's extremely frustrating for players. It's difficult to control the spin. You mentioned late summer, the grain really starts to creep in. Now, I would imagine these things are cut so bare thin and they're going to be rolling at like a 12.5 that the grain isn't quite as crazy as a course like mine, that they're running at a 10.5, whereas they're literally shifting putts because the grass is a little longer. But at any rate, it's going to be difficult late summer. They're going to have to deal with that heat as well. I want to bring in the other market here. And this is the one I feel like people are more likely to play. So this is the without starting strokes market. Rory McIlroy is the favorite at 5-1. I don't know why it's not coming up here. Scotty Scheffler is 6-1. Hovland's 9-1. Rahm 9-1. Cantlay 10-1. Xander 12-1. Homa 16. Morikawa 22. Have you made any plays sort of in this range, Keith, so far?
I have not in the lower range.
Okay.
I have
What do you
not.
got up higher?
There's a Georgia Bulldog that I like this week. He's played there twice before. He hasn't played there in a while, but he's
Harmon?
got a Nope. Does begin with H.
Is it Sepp?
No, it begins with H.
There's a lot of Bulldogs. It begins with H.
Yep, he's Georgia Mafia for sure, and he is one of the guys that
Harris.
is Russell
Oh my goodness. Henley?
Henley.
Talk to me about him.
So he's gaining over 6 strokes total against the field in his last 5 starts. Look at his last couple of starts, and these are against elite fields. I know the Wyndham not as much, but and you're going to say he didn't close. I'm going to get to that point in a moment, okay? But he played well at Memphis. He just shot 63 on Sunday, right? He played well at the BMW. The guy's a ball striker, okay? He can play on Bermuda grass. And I tell you, I show up in the airport down here. If you don't know where you are blind, okay? And even the blind people know that there's Georgia sweatshirts everywhere. There's Georgia Bulldogs. I mean, this is it. This is Mecca for the Georgia Mafia, all right? Now, here's why in a tournament like this, Henley doesn't know where he stands. He's just going to go out and keep shooting 65 every day because the scoreboard is going to show you Scotty's winning by 8. He's not even going to know he's going to win the golf tournament, so he can't throw it on Sunday. He can't get nervous. He's just going to keep making birdies, and then he wins. That's my theory on it.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. I was actually against sort of Russ last week, and that burns me. I saw Andy bringing up a point that he maybe has some consideration for the final Ryder Cup spot. Do you buy into that whatsoever?
No.
Yeah, no. Me neither. Who's got your last spot? Is it Justin Thomas?
I got JT as a lock.
Okay, so you got JT as a lock, Morikawa as a lock, correct?
Yep.
Young, lock?
No.
No, okay. Fowler, lock?
Yes.
Spieth, lock?
Yeah, of course. Yes.
Okay, so my last two I have are Young and Fowler. Who would you have out of there?
No, the last 2 I need, I got Brooks. And I got
Brooks.
Keegan.
Sorry, Brooks. Sorry.
Yeah, so Brooks gets you to 5. Yeah. And then that last spot is basically Keegan or Young, right?
Yeah.
And Young doesn't have another
Burns.
week. Burns has another week. Keegan has another week. It's between the 3 of them, really, in my mind. And it's just everybody stop with the Lucas Glover, okay? The media is building up the Brooks thing. There's never been a year that the 7th guy on points hasn't made it. Let's just stop. Everyone just stop, okay? And everybody else with the JT thing, just stop. JT's going, right? Do I agree with it? No. But you know what? I mean, Zach Johnson is like
Why would you disagree with it?
What's that?
Why would you disagree with Justin Thomas going? Do you think it should be more so performance-based than based on like a history and a gut and a match play thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But his record is extremely strong. And I'm throwing out the President's Cup. He's 1-1 in the Ryder Cup, but he's strong. And somebody's going to say, well, oh, Keith, because he played with Jordan. Well, you know, Jordan hasn't won a singles match in Ryder Cup in all of his Ryder Cups. So, like, you know, there's something going on there when the 2 of them get together. It's a positive thing. I can't really argue against that. And if we're going to get into, like, you know, kind of in the mystic aspects of this and we can't talk about recent form and all these other things, well, then you know what? I got to give it to you that I get it why JT goes. People want him there, and he wants to be there. Now, I'm not saying that Denny or Cam Young doesn't want to be there, but those guys haven't even won tour events.
Yeah, they don't understand.
No.
I think what I was talking about last week is, and I've never been to a Ryder Cup, so I'm just speaking anecdotally here from watching it on television, but it's a different environment. There's a different level of intensity. There's a different level of adrenaline that is coursing through players. And there are certain guys who are not prepared for that. There are certain guys who maybe that is a deficiency in terms of their baseline performance. It doesn't work positively for them having that additional pressure, that adrenaline. Some players with golf, it's weird. It's like shooting a free throw, right? It's you can do it in a gym, you can do it in front of 100,000 people, but when pressure happens, it can become extremely more difficult, and that affects players negatively. For some reason, Justin Thomas, I feel like it brings the absolute best out of him. He understands emotions. He understands how to play with that fire and how to elevate his game in certain situations. And that's why he's on the team for me. It's like it's a European mold where they would just take Sergio and they would take Poulter and they would take guys who maybe hadn't had the greatest season, but they just understand the task at hand of a Ryder Cup, and especially going onto foreign soil. That was my main reasoning why I think he should be on the team.
Everything you said's right. And, people need to get over themselves. He's going to be there. So just pick, argue over Young and Keegan or Burns or something, because they're going to be there. It's, Burns is what, 12 and Ricky's 13, I think, right? Ricky's going to be there. I'm sorry, but I can't see how he's not. And the reason I like Keegan over Burns and Young is that Keegan's been to a Ryder Cup. Keegan's won twice this season. We had 9 multiple winners this year on the PGA Tour, which is like the most we've had in a long time. And you start naming them, right? And you're talking about guys like Rory and obviously Victor and Rahm and Scotty and everything. And Keegan's on that list. Max Homa's on that list. You know what I mean? So man, Keegan won in the fall at the Zozo, and then he had a great Travelers, and that's a designated event. So man, I mean, most people that are in the gambling DFS space or whatever, they forget 2012 at Medina. Keegan and Phil boat raced people. I mean, they were done with 5 holes to go. And, at the end of the day, I think that Keegan is one of those guys that can channel that for sure. And the ball striking's there. So
the interesting thing with Justin Thomas for me would be, does he play a lot? Do they continue to, even though he's probably the least deserving guy to be on the team, and everyone in that room will know it, although I think they all want him there, is it still a situation where you're throwing him out there with Jordan Spieth every round? Or does Spieth take on Fowler? And how does it shake up the matchups? How does Zach Johnson intend to play this? Does he keep Xander and Cantlay together? What does he do with Brooks? Who does he put Brooks with? Does he put Brooks with Scott? There are so many questions. Do you have any sense in how you think he is going to be as a captain? Is he going to stick with sort of the traditional pairings, or do you think he's going to be very analytical, potentially shake things up?
No, there's 2 teams that are set, and we know who they are.
Yeah,
it's JP and Jordan, and it's Patrick and Xander. They're going to play together, and they're going to play together often. I don't anticipate being on foreign soil, us taking time off for rest when you know that Xander and Patrick could go out and just destroy people, right? Mm-hmm. Just rip their hearts out like Indiana Jones, that sort of thing. I see Ricky, honestly, from what I'm hearing, I see Ricky as a great pair for Scotty because the putter.
Okay.
Everyone wants Scotty in foursomes, and they want to put him with a really good putter. I hear a lot of California boy talk. So Max and Colin, I know they weren't great at the Zurich together, but they like playing together with one another. And I hear a lot of Wyndham Harmon talk. Right. So
that would leave Brooks with who? Cam Young? Brooks and Cam Young?
Or Keegan.
Okay.
Or, you mix it up and you could do Brooks with Scotty. You could do a Brooks with Max Homa.
Yeah.
Type of scenario. Does Brooks take on the DJ role with Colin? Everyone thinks that the PGA of America, of which I'm a member of, they think that these guys just do this on a whim, right? They hire a company, right, that does all the analytic work. The European team, they hire Justin Ray's company, 21st Group, right? Mm-hmm. The PGA of America uses a different analytic group, and they have been studying these players and the matchups and the golf course for over a year. So there's nothing arbitrary about what goes on here other than the fact that Xander's going to play with Patrick, right? Because it's proven before that it's worked. But otherwise, they will know to the nth degree that we think we know, you and I know going into any given week, that we're like, I think this guy's going to win this week. They know, and they put so much homework into this that's been going on forever, and they will be as prepared as they can be. I mean, 30 years.
How known and how much is shared between the two teams on course setup, to your knowledge? Do they basically have free reign? Is there an unspoken agreement that is 6 months in advance? Like, look, this is how high we're going to keep the rough. We're not going to make the fairways 10 yards wide. Or is it just totally like, the thing is, I talked to sort of Rick about this, is like, yeah, they could make the rough insane and make 10-yard wide fairways, but then they got to come back here in 2 years and they're going to play an 8,800-yard golf course, so we're going to do it right back to them. But how far do you think you can push the limits in terms of setting a course up in your favor without going too far?
I mean, they went pretty far in France. They went as far as they could, and it worked very well in their favor. So
we went pretty far at Whistling Straits, right?
Oh, yeah.
We did it right back.
Yeah. I mean, the way that they're setting up Bethpage. So here's an insight for you. When they do the Ryder Cup at Bethpage, they're going to start on the second hole, right? So they're not going to use the first hole. They're going to start on the second hole. They're going to build like a 10,000 seat arena around the second tee. And there's a road there so they can bring the players in from the range, right? And then they can boom. But that's a tough hole to start out on, right? And then, later on, they're hoping everything ends around what is now the 17th hole, which is that, like, they're going to build like another 10,000 seat arena around that par 3 17th. So that way, like, those guys come into that cauldron with 3 holes to play, and they're like, oh man, look at this, right? So yes, you need to do everything in your power to make it work for you, right? This is why Kevin Kisner wasn't going to Whistling Straits, because it was going to be 8,000 yards.
Yeah.
Or Kevin Na. They wanted Scotty before Scotty was Scotty, because he was long. And it's going to be that way again, that's another reason why at Marco Simone, it's somebody like Keegan Bradley, he puts it in the fairway all the time, and is an excellent ball striker, really matters, versus just Cam Young being an uber great driver of the golf ball, right? Yep. Scoring is going to count. So yes, to answer your question, 100%. And we won't know, the part B to your question, we won't really know until we're over there to figure it all out. But those guys they're going the week after, the tour guys are going the week after Labor Day. So they're doing a practice round trip to Marco Simone. So Scheffler and the boys were talking about it. So yes.
Good insight. Really, Keith, just having a conversation with you always goes so easily. We're at almost an hour. The time really got away from me. I apologize for keeping you on the road for as long as I did. Let's wrap things up. Tell everyone where they can find Read the Line, how they subscribe for the newsletter, and what other additional content you may be coming out with this week.
Well, hey, if you love Joe and Tour Picks, right, check out Read the Line. Go to readtheline.com. I write for Sports Illustrated and Sporting News, the PGA Tour. I'm trying to teach them a few things about what's actually relevant in our world, Joe. The LPGA, but it's all brought there at readtheline.com. You can see all the different things that I put out there. And of course, there's a newsletter. If you're into the LPGA and PGA Tour for betting, those are the 2 tours that I cover. And I'm on site. I love in-play betting. And, God willing, I'll continue to be a PGA professional for years to come, and friends with you, so it's
10 winners on the season, man. Congrats on that. I was not able to hit that mark. I got it last year, but that is a big accomplishment. So make sure you are following this man.
Thanks, Joe. And I know I'm going to go, but I'm going to listen to your genuine moment of the week. So I hope give me something good.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I will talk to you soon. Appreciate it, Keith. All right, guys. Thank you for hanging with me. It was great to have Keith on and talk through him as always. He has hit a ton of winners this season on the PGA Tour. He won our season-long fantasy league with some of the sharpest mind in the industry. Make sure to check that out. He's on site each and every week. Thank you guys for hanging with me. So to be honest with you, I really don't have anything too deep this week to say. I'm feeling better. I'm feeling like this off season will present some good things. I'm hoping for additional opportunities to take place. The amount of people that reached out and supported me have been fantastic. I wanted to mention Tambo, obviously last week had some great words of encouragement that I think you should go back and listen to. I appreciate, all the people, Wesley, like, thank you for hopping in here, and Brent, and just like everyone who supports the show. It generally means a ton to me. I'm feeling like I'm in this weird spot of life where, I don't know, man, it kind of feels like judgment time. Like, do I need to make this move into doing something that I'm full-time passionate about, or do I need to rest on the laurels of what I've built in another career? And just feeling like I'm trapped in this spot of a little bit of shame, in a sense of like not really being successful and having an end goal that is completely within reach. And I think Tambo talked a lot about stop analyzing the end result and just trusting in the progress. Something he mentioned to me multiple times last week, and I really took home. My friend Model Maniac was also on the event last week and gave me a great book that I would highly advise that anyone listen to. I got the audio book called The Energy Bus. All things to sort of appreciate where you're at in life. Take some time to appreciate some of the progress and just continue to plug away at results and stop trying to be such a macro view of things in terms of what is successful and what is failure. Appreciate your family, appreciate your friends. I was lucky enough to have a great one on tonight with me, and I'm happy to enjoy this show and be able to present it to you each and every week. If you are here now, make sure to subscribe to the channels. We will continue to have off-season content. I will continue to revamp and pour my heart and soul and everything I have to make this show one of the best that there is in terms of the gambling space. And we are going to take this thing to the moon next season. You have my word. There is no give up in sight. We will continue to power through and press on and do what I love each and every Monday night. Thank you once again, Joe Idoni at Tour Picks. This has been Preferred Lines. Have a great week. Enjoy the off season. I hope that you can end this season with another winner at the Tour Championship. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace out.